Welcome to Random But Memorable, a podcast from 1Password. I'm Roo, head of password manager development.
I'm Matt Davey, 1Password's chief experience officer.
I'm Sarah, one of the founders at 1Password.
I'm Anna, the producer behind the show.
And we're the hosts behind Random But Memorable. Together, we offer up bi-weekly security advice, interview special guests from the cybersecurity community, and round up the latest security news in Watchtower Weekly. Plus, we may even play a silly security game or two. So sit back and enjoy the show.
And it looks scarily like the real deal. My wife has just walked into the room and wondering what the hell is going on.
You tell Laura to mind her own business.
I'm just recording the podcast.
He kept the accent while he told her that.
Okay.
So good.
What are you handing me? You're handing me a bowl of the cat's awful liquid medication that smells like mixed up meat. Oh.
You're welcome.
Oh, goodness.
Random but memorable, everybody.
Oh, it smells like hot meat in here now. And of course, now the cat's walking all over my keyboard.
I was worried we weren't going to have some banter, but we just nailed it. This is perfect.
Before we get into Watchtower Weekly, I should mention the guest we have joining us a bit later, because we have Geoff White coming back on the show to discuss his new book. Is one returning visit, is that friend of the show material? I think that
Absolutely.
might be friend of the show.
Yes.
I think Geoff first came on the show during our first season back in 2019? So it was great to catch up with him and dive into his new book, Rinsed, which explores how technology has impacted the criminal world of money laundering, from drug cartels washing their cash in Bitcoin to organized fraud gangs recruiting money mules on social media. Again, like last week's episode, it's another wild ride of an interview, so it's definitely worth sticking around for that one.
But with that, I think we can finally jump into some Watchtower Weekly. You probably all know by now, but this is where we like to share some of the latest cybersecurity news, debate it together, and occasionally rank some hacker names out of 10. So, Matt, what have you got for us this week?
The big Watchtower Weekly for this week is, of course, the Crowdstrike IT outage that affected 8.5 million Windows devices. And this is from the BBC. I would be surprised if you hadn't either heard of this or been directly impacted by it, as this is the outage that affected everything. From airline flights and travel to mobile ordering at Starbucks. Some compared it to an apocalypse. Microsoft says it estimates that 8.5 million computers around the world were disabled by a global IT outage. It is the first time a figure has been put on the incident and suggests it could be the worst cyber event in history. The glitch comes from a security company called Crowdstrike, which sent out a mistaken software update to its huge number of customers. The post by David Weston, the VP at Microsoft, says this is a number that is less than 1% of all Windows machines worldwide, but that the broad economic and societal impacts reflect the use of CrowdStrike by enterprises that run many critical services. The tech giant was keen to point out that this was not an issue with its software, says the incident highlights how important it is for companies such as CrowdStrike to use quality control checks on updates before sending them out. It's also a reminder of how important it is for all of us across the tech ecosystem to prioritize operating with safe deployment and disaster recovery using the mechanisms that exist, Mr. Weston said. The fallout from the IT glitch has been enormous and was already one of the worst cyber incidents in history. The number given by Microsoft means it's probably the largest ever cyber event, eclipsing all previous hacks and outages. The closest to this is probably WannaCry cyber attack in 2017. That is estimated to have impacted around 300,000 computers in 150 different countries. The massive outage also prompted warnings by cybersecurity experts and agencies around the world about a wave of opportunistic hacking attempts linked to the IT outage. Cyber agencies in the UK and Australia are warning people to be vigilant to fake emails, calls, and websites that pretend to be official. CrowdStrike themselves have blamed a bug in its own test software for the mass crash event, and George Kurtz, the head of CrowdStrike, encouraged users to make sure that they were speaking to official representatives from the company before downloading fixes. In a blog post, George Kurtz said, "We know that the adversaries and bad actors will try and exploit events like this. Whenever there is a major news event, especially one linked to technology, hackers respond by tweaking their existing methods, taking into account fear and uncertainty. According to researchers at SecureWorks, there has already been a sharp rise in CrowdStrike-themed domain registrations, hackers registering new websites made to look official and potentially trick IT managers or members of the public into downloading malicious software or handing over private details. Cybersecurity agencies around the world have urged IT responders to only use CrowdStrike's website to source information and help. The advice is mainly for IT managers who are the ones being affected by this as they try to get their organizations back online. But individuals too might be targeted, so experts are warning to be hyper-vigilant and only act on information from the official CrowdStrike channels. One slightly amusing but also scary aspect of this story was that nearly every flight in the US was grounded following this CrowdStrike outage. Southwest Airlines flights remained unaffected because they were still running Windows 3.1. An operating system that is 32 years old.
Oh, incredible.
Southwest Airlines, along with UPS and FedEx, haven't had any issues with the CrowdStrike outage. In response to CNN, Delta Airlines, Spirit, Frontier, and United all reporting issues. Southwest Airlines claimed its operations continued as normal.
That is amazing. I'm so excited by this.
It's wild. Major portions of Southwest Airlines systems are reportedly built on Windows 95 and Windows 3.1, which is something the company has already come under fire for in the past several years. It should go without saying that Southwest needs to update its system, but in this case, it was actually saved by the ancient operating system, and it seems to be doing them some favors, maybe to avoid a Y2K level apocalypse.
That's crazy.
I love this. I love it. This is the reason why people like me are like, I don't need to update my software. I'm okay. I'm just going to keep riding Snow Leopard as long as I can. I don't need to upgrade. And then, you miss out on some things, but then look, my planes are still taking off. Nah.
That is remarkable.
The thing that I don't understand by the whole of this is this is what a nightly or a beta thing exists for, right? Mm-hmm. To test software, not in a test simulation, not in a test scenario, but actually roll it out to a small amount of things, a small amount of people before you release it wider than that. I say this from a perspective of there was a nightly that came out for 1Password. Was it yesterday? Internal only, but it still meant that this morning I couldn't use 1Password, and it was very annoying.
Better you than all of our customers.
Well, yes. I did shout loudly. And that's how this thing should work, right?
Exactly.
I think that's the benefit that we have, though, is that we actually use our product, right? That's what makes it so nice to work on something where you can actually do your thing and see if it's actually working, and then you're impacted by it just the same as our customers.
This was our wellness day. This happened on our wellness day, and the internet could not have melted down on a better day for us. So I actually didn't even know that this was happening until I think maybe Rick texted me, and it was oh, not a good day to be on the internet or something like that. And I saw what had happened.
It was on the news for me as soon as I woke up, because one of the big news channels here was also down. They literally couldn't broadcast.
Yeah, that's right. We had that here too.
It was so pervasive.
Yep.
Wild. Okay. This next one, school gets an F for using facial recognition on kids in canteens. This one, including the punning headline, is from The Register. The UK's data watchdog has reprimanded a school in Essex for using facial recognition for canteen payments, nearly 3 years after other schools were warned about doing the same. A statement from the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, said a school in Chelmsford broke the law when it was introduced facial recognition technology, FRT, to take cashless canteen payments from students in March 2023. By processing biometric data to uniquely identify people, facial recognition can result in high data protection risks, the regulator said. It reprimanded the school, which caters for around 1,200 pupils aged 11 to 18, for failing to carry out a data protection impact assessment before starting to use the facial recognition software as required by UK data protection law at the time. At the same time, the school failed to carry out an assessment of the risks to the children's information before it introduced the facial recognition as the law requires. The regulator said the school had not properly obtained clear permission to process students' biometric information, and the students were not given the opportunity to decide whether they wanted it used in this way. Lynn Curry, the ICO head of Privacy Innovation, said handling people's information correctly in a school canteen environment is as important as handling of the food itself. We expect all organizations to carry out the necessary assessments when deploying a new technology to mitigate any data protection risks and ensure their compliance with data protection laws. The first part of that quote was, I thought it was going to be really snappy. I thought, yeah, this is someone who's like, handling people's information correctly in a school canteen is as important as handling the food itself. But then it just went into normal, what I would assume from a head of privacy. She also said, we've taken action against this school to show introducing measures such as facial recognition technology should not be taken lightly, particularly when it involves children. We don't want to deter other schools from embracing new technologies, but this must be done correctly with data protection at the forefront, championing trust, protecting children's privacy and safeguarding their rights. According to the ICO, the school did send a letter to parents in March 2023. It contained a slip for them to return if they did not want their children to participate in facial recognition. In doing so, the school failed to seek opt-in consent, which meant the school wrongly relied on assumed consent at first, which is not a valid form of consent and requires explicit permission in the eyes of the law. I think this is brilliant. This is exactly what the Information Commissioner's Office should be doing. Where something is a opt-in consent and it's really blatant abuse of that, absolutely they should chase up.
Yep, I agree.
Agreed. Love it.
What I do feel like is this got particularly pointed out because it's a school, but I bet there's many, many other companies that are doing something like this in not a great way and not as consented as should be.
So you think the school was an easy target for, let's make an example out of them so then other companies pay attention because there's a bunch of other companies we should be focusing on? I'm trying to figure out the level of paranoia here.
Like a mild level of paranoia. I'm assuming that they're trying to make a point that you shouldn't do it in schools because schools are one of the worst places that you could do it. Because, like, the parents are making the decision for the children. It's even kind of worse.
Sure, but like parents do need to be making these calls for their kids, right? You're not saying that they shouldn't.
No. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying like the opt-in consent is like a letter home to the parents that has a slip in it, right? It's a It's a bit more loose than you must click this button in order to continue.
Right.
It's very much a let's wait kind of for us to get all the slips back.
As a parent who has seen the slips come home, where it's literally a piece of paper stuck in the bottom of a backpack, if you don't forcibly remove it from your child's backpack, it's not coming out. I don't think that this qualifies as acknowledged consent. Like, this is, forget it. That's the reason why kids don't show up for photo day looking like they know what they're doing. Kids do not relay those information. So I think it's good that they're making this an actual thing where you actually have to see it, sign it, and be a part of it and be an active participant in choosing what you want to do with your data.
Very well said.
Yep.
Okay, you're getting your daily dose of my voice today because I think we can now jump into my chat with Geoff White. If you're a fan of how tech impacts the world of financial crime or just true crime in general, then this interview is probably for you. So let's get right into it. Today, I'm excited to be joined by friend of the show and second-time guest, Geoff White. As an author, speaker, and investigative journalist, Geoff's work has been featured by the BBC, Audible, Sky News, The Sunday Times, and many more. From billion-dollar cyber heists to global money laundering and crypto gangsters, Geoff White has covered it all. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, we're here really to talk about your new book, Rinsed, which reveals how technology has revolutionized money laundering, from drug cartels washing their cash in Bitcoin to organized fraud gangs recruiting money mules on social media. Geoff, I'm excited to chat to you today and get stuck into this book. How have you been doing?
Yeah, not too bad. As anyone who follows me on social media will know, I've been doing quite a lot to try and promote the book. So I've been doing quite a lot of travelling and talking to people. But no, it's been great. And also doing a lot of podcasts like yours, which I really enjoy doing.
Ah, nice. So I gave a little bit of an introduction to the book, but could you give our listeners a brief overview of what the book is and what inspired you to write it?
Yes, the book's called Rinsed, and it's about money laundering and specifically how technology has started to change the industry of money laundering, because it is an industry. It's a very professionally set up network of criminals who launder money. And the reason I wrote it was because, again, as people who've followed my work might know, I've done a lot of stuff on North Korean computer hacking, notably a podcast series and book called The Lazarus Heist, which is about North Korea and how North Korea became a computer hacking superpower. What was interesting about that was North Korea, for various reasons, has been sanctioned by the international community, so it's been cut off from international trade and finance. And so North Korea, frankly, struggles for money. And the accusation is that North Korea has put its computer hackers, its government computer hackers, on the send to pull in hard currency, to pull in cash for the regime. And what's interesting is, time and again, when I investigated this, what I found was that, yes, they were very good at breaking into cryptocurrency companies and banks and insurance companies and so on. But when they actually sort of get their hands, if you like, digitally on the money, moving it and hiding it and extricating it was something that they relied on a whole different set of characters for. So these people are equally technologically savvy, but in a different way. They understand international finance. They understand how to set up money mule accounts, how to move money from one jurisdiction to another, how to launder cryptocurrency. So what I found was, this cybercrime community, it's not just North Korea, cyber criminals in general, were reliant on a lot of these money laundering networks. And then as I investigated further, I realised, of course, that many types of organised crime, so cartel drug dealing, large-scale prostitution, fraud rings and so on, all of them exist to make money, and that money is increasingly being digitised and washed through these kind of high-tech money laundering networks. So that's what made me want to write a book about it.
Do you think it's a completely different landscape and a completely different bunch of criminals that are doing this? Like, how has the transition to a digital economy impacted this? Or is it more of an evolution, a constant of the similar criminals?
Well, it's interesting. There's a couple of things that have happened. It's happened in both traditional finance and what you might call new finance. So in traditional finance, you're talking normal standard banks, legal banks, and very old financial institutions. We've had this sort of sudden rush towards digitization, virtualization, and frictionless, faster economy. So you can look at things like online account creation and faster payments and contactless payments and so on. All these innovations, the idea is make it easy, make it smooth, make it quick. And obviously the COVID pandemic really, really pushed that forward. Banks were largely closed. People weren't going out. Online account creation, online account manipulation had to be part of the deal. And so that fast forwarded a trajectory that was already happening. Now, for money launderers, what that means is you can bounce your money through many, many banks very, very quickly, which makes it potentially hard for law enforcement agencies to keep up. You've also got the whole emergence of what you might call new finance. So people will be familiar, your listeners I'm sure will be familiar with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and so on. So there's that, but there's also things like NFTs and video game currencies as well. There's huge amounts of money sloshing around video games like Call of Duty and so on. And again, money launderers have spotted these new fringe bits of the financial community that a lot of people don't really think of as money in inverted commas. For the money launderers, they're just thinking, well, if I can put some of my funds into that, great. It's international, it's not particularly well regulated, and it moves at lightning speed. That's ideal territory for me as a money launderer to get involved in. So both on the traditional finance side and the sort of new finance side, we've seen innovations that mostly inadvertently and unwittingly assist the kind of high-tech money laundering that I'm talking about.
I've never really thought about game currency being a way to do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating.
Absolutely, yeah. I mentioned Call of Duty there. What was interesting was, again, you and your listeners might not think of, video game currency as being particularly useful for money launderers. The way these games work is there's often an in-game market. And with Call of Duty, there wasn't so much an in-game market, but there was a sort of side market where you could buy and sell assets for the game, things for the game. At one point, that side market was suspended because the makers of the game actually said, look, we believe this entire market has now really been taken over by criminals, by effectively people washing money through this marketplace. So it's absolutely remarkable. Millions and millions of dollars, it seems, were being laundered through that without anybody sort of realising that might be the case, because you don't think of video gaming as being useful for that.
That is wild. And these two worlds, your book describes how kind of organised criminals and cyber criminals are really joining forces. Can you elaborate on how these alliances are formed and generally operate?
Yeah, well, I think people have this idea that cybercrime happens in cyberspace. It's ethereal, it's ones and zeros, and often they feel it's almost a victimless crime. I think that's particularly the case with crimes around cryptocurrency, I think a lot of people think, well, if a person loses their stash of bitcoins, A, have they really lost anything? It was never real in the first place. And B, more fool them because, they were speculating on this bizarre cryptocurrency. However, all that stuff is real money. It has real value. And if people lose $1 million worth of it, that's $1 million worth they have lost. But the thing that was interesting was at a certain point, that kind of very digital, very ones and zeros, very cyber crime starts to hit street level. Because at some stage, most of the criminals who are stealing this stuff, and I include North Korea in this and the allegations against it, but also cybercrime gangs, they need to at some stage buy stuff. They want to buy a yacht, they want to buy a nice apartment, they want to buy a nice dinner in a fancy restaurant. In North Korea's case, they might want to buy nuclear weapons and missiles, which is obviously the very serious side of this. And so at some stage, you kind of need to pull your money into some kind of real world environment or more real world environment. And so often what you're reliant on there is street level money muling gangs. You need people who've got dudes who go around ATMs and actually withdraw the money for you. One of the North Korean cases, they hack into a bank in India back in 2018, this was. They managed to compromise the bank's ATM software. And what that meant was anybody at an ATM, a cash point, anywhere around the world with one of this bank's cards, the Indian bank's cash cards, could put it into a machine and withdraw as much money as they liked. And so that's fantastic for the North Korean hackers who allegedly were behind this. But of course, they've got a problem. They've then got to get people around the world to cash points. And so they managed to pull out, I think it was $11 million in 29 different countries. And they managed to do all of that within 2 hours. They had a street team of people, hundreds of people going from cash point to cash point. But of course, at that point, you've got dudes running around in 29 countries with wads of physical cash. How do you reconcile that back? How do the hackers back in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, get the money reconciled back to them? So I found that really fascinating, this sort of border space between very, very high-tech cybercrime, but also street-level gangs of money launderers.
Hundreds of people, that's a huge operation. Many countries as well.
Yeah, as I say, 2 hours, 13 minutes was the timescale within which this cash was withdrawn. It needed to be coordinated in multiple different countries. Of course, with people speaking multiple different languages, it was an immense operation to configure and to get on the go. It's an absolutely fascinating story.
There's a bunch of kind of wild stories in your book. Could you share one or two that really, stood out to you, like the most during your research?
Yeah, the one I think that really sort of stunned me and went on a very bizarre journey and ends up in a very strange space. Again, it's an alleged North Korean job, this one, but they're accused of breaking into a video game called Axie Infinity back in 2022. Frankly, I'd never heard of this game. I'm not a huge gamer anyway, but I hadn't heard of this game. It was particularly popular in Southeast Asia. At one point, the company behind it was valued at about $2 billion, so it's a hugely successful game. It was all based on cryptocurrency, so whilst in the game you were playing with these little characters called Axies, which were based on salamanders, and you were wrestling them and fighting them in the game. That was a sort of gameplay. What was actually behind it was a cryptocurrency marketplace. You could buy and sell your little characters in the game, and what you were effectively buying and selling was cryptocurrency. What was interesting is the hackers spotted the massive amounts of money sloshing around in this game and decided to steal as much of it as they could. They broke into the game by sending an employee of the company a phishing message pretending to recruit them for a really highly paid fancy job. And so obviously the employee of the company thinks, well, that's great, I'll get more salary here. They fall for the phishing attempt and downloaded a document laced with a virus which allowed the hackers access to the game and the game's servers. After a bit of chicanery, they managed to pull out $625 million, which is a vast amount of money. I think that is the largest amount of money stolen in one go from one victim valued at the time of the theft. It's very hard to find a single one-off, one-hit theft that's more than $625 million. And even if you can find that, in terms of time, this is certainly the fastest heist of all time, because stealing that cryptocurrency, because it was in the form of crypto and could be transferred out digitally, took 1 minute and 55 seconds. So if you think 2 hours to withdraw 11 million from the cash points, a few years later, they're stealing 625 million in under 2 minutes. What's interesting about that is, because it's cryptocurrency, again, many of your listeners will know, you can trace cryptocurrency transactions through this publicly available online ledger called the blockchain. So the hackers, yes, can steal the money, but it's kind of obvious where it's gone. It's gone into these particular crypto wallets. So what they did next was to take the currency and put it into what's called a mixer. a thing called Tornado Cash, which, as the name suggests, it mixes the incoming crypto with existing crypto and then spits it back out to a fresh wallet address. The idea is to sever the connection between the incoming money and the outgoing money. About $500 million of the stolen Axie money goes through Tornado Cash, is mixed, and is now out there in the wild, and we have no idea who's got it or where it went. Now, what's interesting is you could think, well, what a terrible thing Tornado Cash is, what a terrible thing they've done to launder $500 million for the North Koreans. But a lot of people in the crypto community and tech community have actually defended Tornado Cash and said, well, look, that's not great, we understand, but we need services like Tornado Cash to preserve our privacy, to preserve what is effectively basic freedoms and liberties when we're using cryptocurrency, which is, after all traceable. So actually, the crypto community's pushed back on attempts to prosecute Tornado Cash and its founders, saying, well, no, this is a good service. We need this. We know that it was badly used, but we need this service. So it's ended up in this amazing sort of freedom of speech, privacy type debate at the heart of the US government, all around this sort of attempt to launder the money from the North Koreans, all based on a video game involving salamanders. I mean, if you wrote it as a fiction, people probably wouldn't believe it happened, but it's all true.
Do you think there's movie scripts for this in the process of being made into a movie? But or is society, are we not at the point where we actually accept this stuff? Like, it really doesn't sound believable, but it is literally true.
It's interesting. I was cheered actually by the recent release of the latest Jason Statham movie. For listeners unfamiliar, Jason Statham is a British hardman actor who spends most of his films beating people up. The plot of The Beekeeper, the most recent one, was him taking on a sort of gang of cyber criminals who scam people from a sort of scam compound. There was something sort of quite cathartic about watching Jason Statham kicking 7 shades of hell out of these people. So I think filmmakers are starting to see that this is a thing. I think it's starting to, most people will either have been scammed or know somebody who was scammed close to them. So I think we are starting to catch up with this. The difficulty, obviously, for filmmaking is a lot of this stuff goes on in the cyberspace, in the ones and zeros. It's quite difficult to pull it all together, but I'm still hopeful that somebody will make particularly some of the North Korean jobs into a fiction film, because of course I haven't been able to go to North Korea. It's almost impossible certainly for me to film there, and so I think fictionalizing and dramatizing that stuff might be a good way of bringing it all home.
I've seen The Beekeeper. It was a decent movie.
I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed how they kind of made the ransomware company almost like a multi-level marketing, like sales-driven, like they had bells and cheering and that type of thing.
Yeah.
It was a good way to kind of visualize it.
It was sort of like Wolf of Wall Street meets cybercrime. That's actually based on reality. I mean, these scam organizations and actually the ransomware organizations you've talked about, they are professional, Monday to Friday, 24-hour operations. They have workers who clock in and out, they have recruitment, they have payroll, they have, to a certain extent, marketing. That is how it works. They are professionally orientated organizations.
Do you think we stop at some point using the term cybercriminal and instead just used organised crime? Because it does seem like both are very organised.
Yes, certainly cybercrime is almost always a branch of organised crime. What I find interesting about organised crime, and one of the things I've started thinking about quite a lot recently is, you and I have worked for organisations, a lot of your listeners will have as well. When you work for an organisation, a legitimate organisation, if something goes wrong, you can complain, you can maybe sue in the courts, you maybe go to the police or the government or whatever. If you're in an organised crime gang, you can't do that. If a drug gang stitches you up and doesn't pay you, you can't go to the police. So organised crime has to organise people together who are innately untrustworthy. They're all crooks. So how do you trust people who are fundamentally, in their very nature, not to be trusted? The answer to that traditionally has been violence. If you rip me off, I will break your legs. Increasingly, looking at organised cybercrime particularly, but a lot of organised financial crime, you don't have that. You're not working in the same country. I mean, we talked earlier about that job, 29 different countries. You're not physically close enough to somebody to do violence to them. And often you don't even know who they are. A lot of these cybercrimes, people are working under pseudonyms. So you don't even know, even if you can work out where they are, you don't know whose legs to break. And so the networks of trust that go on around organised cybercrime, I find really fascinating. And as organised crime becomes more distributed, as it becomes more digitised and more virtual, and the money becomes more virtual, more and more of those gangs, those organised crime gangs, are starting to use those intricate trust networks and trust systems to try and make their enterprises work across the world. And it's working. I mean, they are, fraud rings are happening across the world. Clearly, they're prepared to cooperate together, and there's a level of trust there that allows all this to happen that goes way beyond the trust you would get just from being able to inflict violence on people.
And just going back to the previous thing that we were talking about, Tornado Cash, wasn't the founding principle of Bitcoin supposed to be this kind of open ledger that everybody could track?
Yes, it's a good question. The issue that virtual currencies had prior to Bitcoin was what's called the double spend problem, which is if I'm sending a sort of virtual currency, I could equally send that to two people at the same time, simultaneously. Both of them would apparently have received a transfer from me, and I've effectively spent one of my virtual coins twice on two people. The way Bitcoin got around that was this blockchain, this open source ledger, where you could instantly see who'd sent what money to whom, and there were auditors, effectively voluntary auditors out there who would check all those transactions, make sure nobody had pulled a fast one, and in return for which would be rewarded with virtual currency. That was sort of the massive innovation of Bitcoin and the blockchain behind it. Now, obviously, you can see the transaction go from a wallet to a wallet, but you can't necessarily know who owns those wallets. There's no names necessarily attached to them. So that sort of open ledger was meant to solve that problem. It was always meant to be pseudonymous. There was arguments about whether it's anonymous, because your wallet, effectively, your wallet address is kind of a pseudonym for you. Increasingly, the game is, can we link those wallet addresses to individuals? So on the dark web, for example, if I set up shop and I say, hey, if you want to pay me for stolen credit cards or whatever, pay me into this Bitcoin wallet address. Well, from then on, you know that my dark web identity is linked to that Bitcoin wallet address. And if I get arrested and exposed, you can then link my name to that Bitcoin wallet address. So de-anonymizing this network's been sort of part of the game. But if you use it correctly, you can use Bitcoin anonymously. It's possible to use it. It's just, for a lot of people, that's not necessarily what they're after. And for some people, they try and be anonymous, but they get caught out. What's interesting now is the debate within the crypto community of people saying, well, yeah, I understand all of that, but I want anonymity, proper anonymity. I get that with cash. I can withdraw cash and no one can attach it to me. It's just pure bare cash. I want the same thing from cryptocurrency. I want privacy. I don't want to be tracked. And interestingly, we're seeing this around this thing called central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, which is the idea that at a government level, you know, these blockchain ledgers and these tracking systems will be used. There are some people who are very concerned about that in terms of government surveillance and privacy. So again, those people from that side of the debate are pushing in and saying, we need privacy and we need these sort of mixers like Tornado Cash. So yeah, the debate is super fascinating and a lot wider, I think, than people would first think at first blush.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely where I'm coming from. Like, you see criminals use this thing and you see the kind of community that was built on this initial thought of openness and now being like, well, actually, that's not great. And just to hear some of the nuance in that argument is really cool.
Yeah.
What are some of the other kind of sophisticated techniques and technologies that cyber criminals are using to launder money in today's digital age?
Well, it's interesting. One of the cases I've covered in the book is a crime group called the Black Axe, which originates in Nigeria in the 1970s, but has become really a sort of international conglomerate. I think I describe it in the book as like the interfloor of money laundering, that they have people everywhere. Wherever you want to launder money, there's usually a Black Axe operative who can help you out. And what's fascinating about that is the sort of ground operation that they've got of people who are prepared to effectively render up their bank accounts, you know, people like you and me and your listeners, you know, who in exchange for a small fee, you know, a few $100, maybe a few $100, maybe a few thousand, will hand over their bank details and allow their bank account to be used for money to be washed through. Again, you might think, well, that's that sort of street level, that's not particularly advanced or sophisticated. That's where it often comes down to, as I've said before, you need those street level operatives because changing it into cash is the ultimate sort of step of obscuring the money trail and laundering the money. But B, there is a high-tech, very high-tech aspect to this because social media is being used as the recruiting tool for these people. You know, if you go on Instagram and Snapchat and you follow the right hashtags and the right accounts, you will see, I don't know what the figure would be, it's certainly in the hundreds, maybe the thousands, so worldwide, possibly even millions of accounts that are encouraging people into this and saying, look, you can make big money. Here's what you can buy. Here's the trainers you can buy, the car you can buy. Here's the expensive watches you can buy if you take part in this sort of exercise. So again, there's this use of very advanced sort of social media recruitment tactics to pull these people in. And of course, frankly, if your money mule then gets caught weeks, months, years later, who cares? You know, you've rinsed the money through their account. It's their problem. They're the ones getting taken to court. So I find that super fascinating in terms of using high-tech means of social media for what is quite, in the end, a low-tech exercise.
Yeah, fascinating that people still kind of follow that through, especially coming from social media, right? I think the inherent untrustworthiness of the amount of scams, you'd really like avoid it. But I guess the watches and the cars really draw people in.
Yeah, and the gangs are extremely used to convincing people. And one of the interesting things they will tell their victims or recruits, depending on how you regard the sort of money mules that they're recruiting, is to say, empty your bank account out of money. We don't put any money in your account. Put the balance at zero, because we're not going to steal your money. So you can give us your bank account login, and there's no money there for us to steal. If there's no money in the account, we can't take any of your money. We're just going to push money through your account. And by the way, once we're done, you'll be left with £500 or whatever it is. So again, in terms of sort of getting around people and convincing them around these scams, those money laundering gangs are extremely adept at that.
And when researching for the book, were people really forthcoming in talking to you about this, or did it take some kind of real investigative digging and tactics?
It's an interesting one, yeah. I'll be completely frank about this. The idea that I have, dark web contacts who I'm constantly in touch with, that's not the case. I mean, for a start, most of the cases I'm covering in the book are cases that have been prosecuted. So somebody's been actually sent to prison for it. You can then get the full story. You understand the villain and what they did, but you also understand the police activity around that. So you get the whole sort of story coming together. It contained in those court documents is often a huge treasure trove of information, obscured in layers and layers of legal language that actually tells you the story of what went on, of who communicated with who, when, and what they said, and so on. Obviously, the law enforcement side, particularly when they get a successful prosecution, are sort of very willing to speak. But you do also get, I'm keen to hear the sort of villain side, the kind of wrongdoer side. So again, going back to that money muling recruitment thing on social media, one of the things I did for the book was to set up an account on Instagram and start making myself available for money laundering. Obviously, I didn't go through with it because that's a crime, but I got contacted by people who were explaining to me, this is how it works, this is the details I need from you, this is what I need you to do for me. And so you get this insight into how quickly these people will, frankly, hop on a phone call and talk you through the process of money laundering. One of the most bizarre ones was the first chapter of the book talks about a crime gang in Manchester, a couple of sisters called the Din sisters, who are a couple of middle-aged women who ran a beauty salon, effectively, a beauty business online. By day, but by night were smuggling in heroin and selling it in the north of England. They hit on the idea of turning their cash profits from the drug dealing into Bitcoin because, as the book plentifully points out, cryptocurrency is a very useful tool for criminals like that to move their money. One of the people who was couriering their cash to the Bitcoin broker was a guy called Arjam Badesha, who did 3 years in prison, sentenced to 3 years for that. He'd got out by the time I was researching the book, so I contacted him to ask for an interview because I wanted to hear his side. He didn't want to speak to me, but the next day his dad phoned me up, which is quite bizarre, explained to me that his son, had been caught out and was innocent and fell in with a bad crowd, etc., etc. So I went back after this to Manchester police, who had originally talked to me about the story, and I said, I heard from Arjam Badesha's dad, Jack Badesha. And they said, yes, did he tell you about his own criminal conviction? Which surprisingly he hadn't. It turns out he'd been involved in an £18 million VAT tax scam several years previously and had basically fled to Dubai without paying back the money. So it was interesting that had he not called me up, he wouldn't have put himself on my radar. And I'm still sort of perplexed as to why he did. But it was interesting, again, talking to him about his son and so on. So you do get these glimpses of how that sort of criminal underworld works. Every now and again, you get slightly close to it.
That is so wild. So in terms of the authorities, what do you think is the biggest challenge that they face when trying to crack down on these networks?
Firstly, it's knowledge. And there's this interesting cultural aspect, certainly in British policing, and it might be the case in other countries as well. I sort of feel like people join the police because they want to jump in a fast car with blue lights and sirens flashing and go around and smash a door down and put someone in handcuffs, who's an evil wrongdoer. I think that's still a motivation for a lot of people signing up for the police. Increasingly, crime is being virtualised, it's becoming economic. We have epidemic rates, I believe, of fraud in the UK and worldwide at the moment. Estimates around fraud in the UK is sort of 40% of all reported crime. Frankly, those fraud gangs, you're not going to jump in a car, bash down a door and put that person in handcuffs, much as Jason Statham's film The Beekeeper might suggest. That's possible, because they're based in different jurisdictions. I mean, we talked earlier about that case, the 29 different countries. That's a deliberate tactic by the crime gangs. The more countries you base yourself in, the harder it's going to be for any one country's law enforcement team to track you down. So there's all these different sort of problems in the way. There are efforts, to sort of coordinate this. In the UK, we have the National Crime Agency who do international sort of operations and look more broadly than this. They will work with the FBI. There's, of course, Interpol, Europol, who do work around this. So there's efforts around this. But so many of these scams are happening to individuals at a local level. And from a lot of people's experience that I hear, going into your local police station to report this, you just don't feel you're sort of getting anywhere. And that's the other issue, of course, is if you report it to your local police station, they will log it, they will record the details, and it could be years down the line, your case and your evidence helped with the prosecution of some massive case. But by that stage, your local police officer is not going to phone you up and say, oh, by the way, you reported 2 years ago. It turns out we arrested the person and, thank you for your... By the way, you're not going to get your money back, but thank you for your help. That just doesn't happen. And so I think for the public, they think, what's the point of reporting? I'm not going to get my money back, it seems. I'm not going to be seeing my perpetrator in handcuffs. And so for all of these different reasons, sort of cybercrime is a difficult one to crack, I think, for law enforcement.
It's a tale as old as time, right? Like the institutions that we have don't move as fast as technology. And so like we end up playing this catch-up game of like, oh, if you do it in 2 countries, which is very easy on the internet to do,
yes,
it becomes very difficult for these hundreds of years old institutions trying to work with each other.
Yeah.
So through all of your research into this, what did you conclude is kind of the best way that we as an average person can better ourselves or the organizations that we work for from becoming targets of these more and more sophisticated cyber attacks and cyber criminals?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, look, on the money muling side, I've talked about social media being used to recruit money mules. I'd imagine, frankly, your listeners are not going to probably be caught out by that. They're probably not going to be likely to be tempted in, with the promise of a few £100s or dollars or euros or whatever to make their bank account available. But, you will have younger friends, maybe sons, daughters, etc., who might be, so it's worth alerting to that thing and saying, look, there's a scam going around where they try and get access to your bank account. You do realise that's a criminal offence. You'll go to jail for that. But in terms more generally of us, it's still the case, I think, that impersonation crimes, fraud and that kind of thing are still the heart of a lot of these sort of crimes. And it will be phishing. We used to say phishing emails. It's now phishing messages. So it'll be phishing messages coming into your Facebook account, coming into your Instagram, coming into your Twitter direct messages, potentially social media, LinkedIn and that kind of thing, text messages. Increasingly, the unfortunate case is that any message that comes into you, it's increasingly difficult to really know that actually came from the person who appeared to send it, particularly the scaling up of artificial intelligence and the use of deep fakes. Voice calls in the voice of the person that you think you know are increasingly doable. Video will be the next thing in that. You'll be able to get a video call from somebody who really does look like your friend on a video call. All of us just have to kind of up our defences to that and start, particularly when it comes to money. If there's a message you receive that has anything to do with money, credit card details, bank account transfers, passwords, anything like that, the alarm bell should ring to say, I think this is my friend or my colleague or my son or daughter or whatever, but I need to check. I just need to put some extra thing in place to check. I mean, we're seeing cases all over the place of this. We're seeing elderly relatives getting calls apparently from their younger family members saying, I'm trapped in this country, I've lost my passport, can you send me money? And of course it sounds like their voice. Again, it's money, it's contact. Take the next step to work out, is that really your relative contacting you? But we're seeing it at a really high level as well. In Hong Kong, a firm called Arup was caught out recently losing $25 million because there was a fake video of not just the chief executive, but senior members of the team that a senior finance person fell for and transferred $25 million. So I think basically any conversation, any contact that you get that has anything to do with money, the alarm bell just immediately needs to ring for us, whether it's in our private life or professional life, to say, is the person I'm communicating with actually the person that I believe they are? That's the defense shield we need to put up that I think will save a lot of this stuff.
This is kind of like a big trend that we're seeing, which is people like gaining information through stolen credentials and through stolen information and then pretending to be those people in order to ask for money. Are there other trends that you're kind of foreseeing in the realm of cybercrime and general money laundering?
Certainly in terms of the fraud, fraud is a crime of deception. So basically you are deceiving somebody to thinking you are one thing when you're actually in reality another thing. So as I say, artificial intelligence is fed into that because you can generate voice, you can generate video, so it feeds into that sort of crime of impersonation. In terms of money laundering, the sort of cutting edge of it is these whole new realms of finance. I've talked about things like NFTs and video game currency and so on. What's interesting is they're the very fringes of society, the very fringes of regulation, and there's huge amounts of money sloshing about in them because people, frankly, will often be keen to speculate on those kind of things. A new currency comes along, a virtual currency, or a new video game, or as we saw with NFTs, the NFTs behind these random pictures of apes, people will sort of put money into them. So that's where the sort of game is going on in that respect.
So finally, wrapping things up, where can people go to learn more about you or purchase the book?
Good point, yeah. So my website's geoffwhite.tech. So it's Geoff with a G, Geoff, and white like the colour, and it's .tech, TECH. And the book is available, it's called Rinsed, it's on Amazon. Also for folks, particularly in the UK, bookshop.org is a great website where if you order it, it goes through your local bookshop. So your local bookshop gets the money, but you get the book delivered to you like Amazon. So I'd recommend that as well. But yes, that's where people can find out.
Amazing. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
That was an excellent interview. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Geoff White, for joining us on the show today. Up next, we're going to switch over to our new Agony Aunt segment where we have Roo answering questions from our users and providing information on how you can make your life more secure.
Our latest email comes from Michael in London. Okay, this guy's name is Michael, and he lives in London. I think this guy definitely sounds like Michael Caine. So I think I should read the letter like Michael Caine. Although saying that, I don't know whether I can muster the Michael Caine accent.
For like a significant portion of time, too.
Oh, yeah. Let me think about this. Right. No, it's not there. Okay, let me try again.
Sorry, you have to do a few things. You have to say Michael Caine, and then you have to say not a lot of people know about that. Okay? You do those two things. Yeah.
My name is Michael Caine. Not a lot of people know that. Right, here we go. Dear Roo, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Michael from London. I've received recently some suspicious emails that look quite convincing. These seem to be getting more common and harder to detect what's fake. I recently got an email from what claimed to be my energy provider. It's on the word energy provider, and it looks scarily like the real deal. At first glance, it was practically identical. I find myself questioning everything now and needing to know what to trust. Can you share some tips on what to do here? What are the telltale signs of a phishing email, and what should I do if I suspect one? Any insights would be huge help. Keep up the great work with the pod. Best regards, Mile.
Normally we would apologize for an accent like that, but I'm giddy with excitement about how wonderful that was. So Michael, if you didn't care for that, I'm sorry. That's not our problem.
And if you were Michael Caine, and that's who this Michael is, please let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your review.
The only way that you can be offended by that is if you are Michael Caine, and then I would gladly accept some offense from you.
I agree. Not a lot of people know that. Right. After that bad Michael Caine impression, I'm going to have to leave.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right.
I hope it's worth it, whatever you're going to. It's not.
Love you. Love you, Matt.
Love you, bye.
So, Michael, you are right to not trust anything and to just be suspicious of every single email you get. So, you're right. Phishing emails are indeed getting better and better. In fact, I remember just a couple years ago, my wife got a phishing email claiming to be from Apple about having to sign in and check her Apple ID, and the email was practically a pixel-perfect rendition of the emails that come from Apple that are legit. It was about managing a subscription. And she had clicked through and had put in her password. And luckily we have 2FA turned on for all of our Apple IDs. And so she got a ping to say, like, do you want to provide your 6-digit code for your device attempting to sign in Dearborn, Michigan? And she was like, hold on, that's not a thing. So we then went and changed her password and stuff. Her account was fine. The rule that I have with pretty much any service email that I get is I go to the service and I log in directly and I look for some sort of message in a message center or notification or something, and I don't interact with the email. And a similar thing, if I get a phone call from a place, I will not just call that number back, but rather like I will go to the website, specifically if it's a financial institution that's claiming to call me. I will go to the website, I will look up the number there, and I will call them directly, or I'll call the number on the back of my credit card or something. So it has honestly like saved me a great deal, because you can certainly start to inspect URLs and mouse over and see who the actual email is from, but even some of that stuff can be faked and spoofed in a way that is really difficult to tell if it's real or not. And honestly, if there is a legit concern that your energy provider is messaging you about, I guarantee that same message will show up in front of you when you log into your account through their website directly. You won't be missing anything here. So that's my advice, is to just don't click on things in your email and go right to the service instead.
Yep. There's not a whole lot you could add to that. Look for funny letters.
Right.
There was one I had the other day where the Q was that was the one piece where the Q wasn't the right text.
Yeah.
That was what threw it off. And I'm like, scammers are good.
Yeah.
If
you do find yourself having clicked through a link and trying to log in, 1Password will attempt to save you, because it will not recommend credentials for the site that it is purporting to be. It will only recommend credentials on the legitimate site. So if you're trying to log into your energy provider and you're wondering why 1Password isn't surfacing your energy provider login details for you, it means that you're not on your energy provider website. So, there is a little bit of a fallback here.
Yay, bonus.
Yes.
All right. So if you enjoyed that segment and you have questions for, I'm still not sure why it's an Agony Aunt. I'm assuming that's a British thing.
I don't either.
But we're just going to go with it. So if you have any questions for our dear Roo and you would like them to be read in a specific accent, please send them with any voice notes or anything like that. Please send us an email at podcast@onepassword.com. You can include your name or let us know if you'd like to remain anonymous, and we'll be happy to read them here on the show and help others with what is probably a question a lot of people have.
Yep.
And unfortunately, Matt isn't around to play Password Panic, and I won last week, so I can't. I was gonna host, but I can't let you play by yourself, and we're not ready to play against AI yet. I think that would be very bad. So we're not going to do that. So Anna has decided to join us just for this segment. So Anna, yay!
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Just dropping
Yay,
in.
everybody's here today.
Brits are interchangeable. That's fine. You drop one out, you put another one in. It's all the same.
One accent for the other.
I can try and sound like Matt.
Can you do a Michael Caine impression?
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. How was that?
Oh,
You are welcome here. Yes.
Excellent.
Join.
I feel like I've known Matt long enough to do a good Matt impression.
We're waiting. Yes, please.
just make everything you say drip with derision and you will be fine. Like, that's pretty close to Matt.
Okay, so welcome to Password Panic, the fast-paced memory testing trivia game. Here, our hosts have to answer a number of general knowledge questions to create one long password. But there's a catch. When answering, they must buzz in and recite every correct answer from the round in order before adding the new answer to the list. So, as this long list grows, we will begin to create a complex password. So this is a test of knowledge and memory. So we also have the new jingle.
Password panic. I hope you did your homework, hope you came prepared, hope you buckled down and practiced. Cause when the pressure starts to mount and your memory gives out, it'll hardly even matter that you buzzed the fastest. Answer quick, recall the list, and only time will show how the competition in this edition of Password Panic will go.
I didn't realize until I heard it just then that that was a Panic at the Disco-esque jingle here. It was good.
I'm holding it. I listened to this with my daughter, and she's like, "Oh, is this supposed to be cringe? Oh, someone put too much effort into this for it to be cringe." And I'm like, so I don't know if we're hitting the younger generation with that jingle, but boy, does she know how to cut.
Yeah, just get her to listen to it a few hundred times, because she'll dig it after that, I reckon.
I think I'm just going to put it on loop for her. She's not going to know what happened.
It honestly lives rent-free in my head at this point when I'm editing.
Nice.
All right. So the first trivia question we have is, remember to get your buzzers at the ready. What is the tallest mountain in the world? Roo.
Sorry. Is it Everest?
It is Everest.
Okay, great.
Okay, next one. Bono is the lead singer of which band? That was Roo again.
Everest, U2.
Yes, you're correct.
I was like, what the is Everest? Everest is the lead singer. I totally am not going to win today. This is so rough. Oh, no.
Okay, next we have, what is the hardest natural substance on Earth? Go for it, Roo.
Everest, U2, diamond.
Yes, correct.
Oh, good job.
Next up, we have, what is the punctuation mark for an ellipsis?
It is Everest, U2, diamond, ...
Very good, yeah.
Did you know that one, Roo?
I didn't understand what the question meant. Like, an ellipsis is the punctuation mark.
But did you know that the ... when someone writes ... that actually has a word?
Oh, yes, I knew that.
Oh, see, I just thought that was like, I'm yappy in real life, so therefore I don't know how to be short on like, I didn't know that was a thing.
So also, like, an ellipsis is not typed with 3 periods. If you want to type an ellipses, it's...
What?
Yeah, it's option colon. That types an ellipses.
Option colon.
It's its own character.
You are blowing my mind right now.
Yes.
No.
Oh, I didn't know
Yes.
that.
I'm not going to remember to option my colon. I'm just going to keep hitting ...
Me too. Okay, we could leave this on a cliffhanger with ... but we won't. So the next question is, how many degrees are in a circle? Go on, Root.
Everest, U2, diamond, ellipses is its own character, but ... sure. And 360.
Very good. Next question. Which 34-letter word has been made famous by a song in Disney's Mary Poppins? Go for it, Sarah.
Everest, U2, diamond, ... 360, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Very good.
I think I got the sound of it. It wasn't quite atrocious.
And what symbol is used on social media to identify digital content on a specific topic? Can't read.
Okay. Everest, U2, diamond, ... Uh-oh. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Oh, you skipped
no,
one.
I missed
Oh,
one.
no.
I skipped one. What the heck did I skip? Hold on. I mean, Sarah, if you know it, just go.
Oh, it was Everest, U2, oh no, diamond?
Yes,
Yeah.
diamond.
Diamond, ... 360.
Oh, 360.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And then now that I don't even know that an ellipsis is an ellipsis, I don't want to say pound sign because I bet you it's a hashtag because that's the cool thing. But like, I'm old, so a pound sign.
No,
Pound
it's a hashtag.
It's the same symbol.
It's the same thing.
It's the same symbol.
We should have left it on the cliffhanger.
So that's it. Like, I lose, Sarah wins.
Again, yes.
Again.
Second victory in a row.
I don't feel good about winning that one.
No,
No, you should. That was good.
that's very
Pound
good.
signs are for old people, but you know, us old operating system people, me and Southwest Air, we're gonna take our old stuff and they have an operating system that runs on a pound sign. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, 100%.
betcha.
It's called a pound
Yeah.
sign in Windows 3.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, Rue, did you want to enter this password into one password?
The password strength came up excellent. Top marks. Terrific. We did it.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Yay!
We got letters, numbers, capitals, symbols. It's incredible.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Yep.
And I'm never gonna remember it.
No.
I don't think I could spell superfragilist.
You're right. No.
I can't say it again. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Okay. It was the second part of that there. But I don't think I could spell that properly because I bet you there's a K instead of a C and no way I'd remember it and or spell it. You know, it's one of those ones where you have to enter the password and then you enter it again and it would be like, this is wrong. And I'm like, I'm sure I typed it the same. What did I do wrong? So, no. Poppy feature, one password. Saved my butt.
Yep.
Once more.
Very
Perfect.
good.
I guess
Wow.
that takes us to the end of another thrilling episode.
It's been a journey. We've lost hosts and gained hosts along
Yep.
the way.
This episode has everything.
Exactly.
Well, I guess there's nothing left to say, but Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also leave us a rating or review. It's one of the best ways to support Random But Memorable, and we always love reading your feedback. We're also a community-led podcast, so if you have any questions for us, topic requests, or even guests you'd like to hear from, please send us an email at podcast@onepassword.com. We read all of your comments and look forward to hearing from you. We hope you'll join us for the next episode with plenty more random moments in the wide world of cybersecurity.